Now, Dr. Sridevi, are you there? Yeah, over to you, ma'am.
Yeah, a very good evening to all. So, all the panelists have focused mostly on the rural sector with reference to the agriculture. If we actually start talking about the budget discussion, this time the budget discussion started with the three important issues which were existing in the Indian economy. One, with reference to the trade, there is a decline in the exports as well as increase in the import volume. And then, because of which the rupee dwindling against the dollar. And the other important issue is the Indian manufacturing growth slowed as a significant contributor factor for the decline in the GDP growth rate. So the economic survey actually opened with elaborate discussions on the geopolitical and the economic uncertainties that stand as an important reason for the domestic performance. So the declaring growth and along with the high levels of the inflation crossing the projected threshold, neglect of agriculture, and existence of the unemployment in the various sectors. All this led to the a kind of sectoral imbalance also. So the previous panelist did mention that the agriculture contributed a larger share in terms of the agriculture GDP to the overall growth. And it was also known fact that investment in R&D, say for example, by 1,000 crores may lead to the much higher returns in terms of the production or the agriculture contribution to the GDP. So the budget by finance minister focused on the growth, inclusive development, investment, as well as the main focus was also on the middle class, basically, as the argument is that the richer class is becoming richer day by day, and the poor class are getting the certain kind of benefits from the state in the form of the welfare programs, whereas the left out class is the middle income with a given inflation and the low levels of the unemployment and not much change in the real wages. The aggregate demand has fallen. So with all these, when we look at the impacts, basically I'll be mostly focusing on the budget allocations as well as the impacts on the various programs and women as well as the marginalized groups. So with reference to the agriculture, the long pending issue of the price policy has not been addressed, and the budget overlooks the declining areas and the cereals and the nutri-cereals, because we also see that food and nutrition security are becoming an important issues for majority of the marginalized groups now, with the given levels of the malnutrition as well as the anemia among the females. So the neglect of the price policy, marketing policy, agriculture trade and land quality and the access to the irrigation has undoubtedly come in the way of accelerating the rural growth, which in turn influence the labor force participation also. And also in terms of the also in terms of the female employment in the agriculture sector. So the efficiency of irrigation and the and degradation of the land and its preparedness, also in terms of the climate resilience, are essential for the agriculture sector growth. Despite all the constraints given, the agriculture sector is the second most contributor sector through aggregate growth of the economy. So it in a way says that in terms of the employment, especially female employment, agriculture sector contributes to a larger extent in terms of the women empowerment as well as in terms of the food and nutrition security. So what exactly happened to the gender budgeting in the current budget, and what is the impact on the quotient 2.0 or the other programs of the welfare programs, basically, is what I'll be trying to look at. So the budget for Anganwadi and quotient 2.0, if we look at in absolute numbers, it has increased from the 21,960 crores to 809.64 crores for 2023-24. But the rise is, if you look in terms of the growth rates, is much smaller. Most importantly, the salaries for the Anganwadi workers and the helpers, and it is also clear from the existing secondary level sources of the data and the primary studies that most of the Anganwadis do not have the required staff to perform the better way. So the budget doesn't include those constraints when we are talking about the zero hunger by 2030, or the main aim of the budget. What the finance minister says is that that budget aligns with the broader goal of the Viksit Bharat of the 2047. So we actually neglect the most important components of the child nutritional security. As if we look at the numbers, 10 crore beneficiaries, of which 8 crore are the children and 2 crore are the pregnant women and the lactating mothers, who are receiving almost 300 days support in terms of the nutritional supplements or various other programs under Quotient 2.0. The current data very clearly shows that 37% of the children, or in other ways, 6 crores, are stunted, and nearly 8.8 lakh children die every year in India because of the nutritional insecurity or various other health-related issues. So in this context, it's very essential to look at the budget allocation for the various social support programs, and especially meeting its gender goals and the women empowerment. Because as already the other panelist has already mentioned, the rural real wages are stagnant. The budget has not focused on the women and the marginalized societies, though there have been some positive announcements in the budget, but 70% of the women is what the aim is, to bring them to the labor force participation or to the labor market. But currently only 40.3% are what actually participating in the labor force, when we compare it with the men at 73%. So if we look at the women coming from the marginalized group, 5 lakh women belonging to SC and ST will maybe benefiting if the implementation of the program is successful, because all the budget talks about the first time entrepreneurship is what as the current stand-up program, but it doesn't talk about any modalities of the program. But this particular allocation aims for the marginalized group of female. So allocation for the ministries for the marginalized groups, also the Ministry of the Tribal Affairs, the Social Justice and the empowerment of people with the disabilities, have seen less than less than 15%, especially Ministry of the Tribal Affairs 14%, and the Social Justice and the empowerment of people with the disabilities have seen less than 5% increase. And the more troublesome trend, however, is that the lower utilization of the allocated budget itself from these ministries, which is actually a larger question towards the implementation of the various programs. So the actual expenditure by the ministries is lower than the budget estimates. So the in that context, it is very essential that do the allocations actually reach to the desired groups, how successful the implementation of these programs. The gender budget statement has increased as a percentage to the total union budget, but that is most importantly in the gender budgeting under Group B, because they have included the new program, inclusion of the Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana in that particular program, which was not reported in GBS earlier. So the allocation towards the Part A of the gender budget has declined from last budget session. This decline is due to decline in the PM Awas Yojana for the urban areas and LPG connection for poor household, which are reported in the Part A of the gender budgeting statements. So the gender budgeting main aim is for the empowerment of the women, also the empowerment of the women coming from the marginalized groups. But the allocation of the budget and the expenditure doesn't prove that actually we are moving towards the empowerment of the women, because there is a huge gap. The government also,
Dr. Sridevi,
yeah,
you may have to wind up.
yeah.
Yeah,
So,
please.
in that context, it is important that to be having inclusive policies and allocate for the empowerment of the women and the marginalized communities, not only for achieving the so-called sustainable development goals, or the what the budget calls it as the inclusive policy, or the goals and the objective of the achieving the Viksit Bharat. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sridevi. Particularly drawing our attention to low utilization of fund allotted versus need for the same. Is there any leakage, or is there any fault in the execution? These are some questions. I think even Professor Shekhar also raised it at some point, right? Um, and also that nutrition security, right? To what extent is being neglected? That is also an important aspect we need to consider, because anything that happens to social sector, particularly the what you call household social consumption, especially health sector, right? If out of pocket expenditure increases, then definitely their income, right, remaining portion of their income to spend on other commodities, including education, will be bare minimum. So this is one aspect which we have to keep in mind while talking about rural sector per se. Now, thank you so much, Doctor. We'll move on to the next speaker.